Welcome. This podcast brings to you the remarkable achievements and transformative stories from the De-suung Skilling Programme, or DSP. The DSP is on a mission to build a resilient and skilled workforce in Bhutan driven by youth. I'm your host, Namgay Choden, and in our following episodes, we will hear from our guests about how they've been able to create far-reaching impact on our individuals and communities through the DSP. So, we invite our listeners in Bhutan and beyond to connect, contribute, and be part of Bhutan's journey towards skills development. So, Stephen, welcome to our podcast and our brand new studio. All this has been done by our Desuups who were trained in media and production. So, you are our very first guest with the brand new setup.
Oh, thank you for the warm welcome, Namgay.
All right.
I'm glad to be here.
So, to begin with, who are you? Tell us a little bit about where you come from and what you do.
Oh my, it's a great question. Who am I?
Yeah.
I won't come from the totally spiritual philosophical angle yet. In brief, I'm a teacher and a learner simultaneously. I'm a geek. I'm a wizard. I'm technically here teaching artificial intelligence, but I also find that there's so much of an intersection between that and mindfulness and collaboration and critical thinking and just all sorts of things. I'm on a journey to find meaningful contribution in the world, and I feel like in Bhutan I've found that in a big way for the last couple of months that I've been teaching here.
Yeah. And you've been here for 2 months.
Yeah.
And you're teaching a course at the DSP called Collaborating with AI.
That's correct, yeah.
And before we delve into what the course is about, tell me about your Bhutan Connect. How did you come to be here?
Sure. So, the story begins about 37 years ago in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell the,
On a dark, stormy night.
I actually don't know. What was the weather like on the day I was born? I'll ask my mom. But in brief, I grew up in the United States. I was not born in Texas, but I got there as fast as my family could, I guess. Grew up in Austin, which is the capital. And it's become more and more of a tech city over time.
Right.
And my dad was part of that. So he has worked in semiconductors, designing computer chips. So I grew up with a computer and the internet eventually. And fun fact, I was homeschooled by my mother.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
me and my younger sister, we had like a classroom in the house, and from a certain time in the morning to a little bit in the afternoon, it was school time. And we would do lessons and tests and everything, like the whole deal. So I kind of because I didn't really grow up in the American school system, I've always been like, well, maybe some people who did are also this way, but I think that shaped me into being like a lifelong learner. Like I'm always learning on my own, autodidactically. So the internet kind of amplified that in my teens and 20s. Like I went to university for philosophy actually, but I spent most of my time like producing a philosophy podcast. Yes. It's called Bad Philosophy. You can still go to it. Being randomly viral on YouTube before a sign language performance. So I've kind of like always explored many different modalities simultaneously and been kind of a generalist. Working in tech in my mid-20s, I kind of burned out. And about 10 years ago, I went on this kind of like walkabout sort of a thing where I went to eco-villages in Europe and Canada and learned how to chop wood, and I grew my beard and my hair out like for the first time, totally hippie. But it showed me kind of for the first time how much technology had skewed my mind and how much I was suffering. Yeah. And I met many people who were like, oh, you should do these like free 10-day meditation retreats called Vipassana. And so eventually hearing that from like 3 or 4 different people around the world, I was like, okay, maybe this is something I should check out. And I did. I went to a center in Texas. It's actually one of the largest centers in the US for the Goenka Vipassana retreats. And I got to say, like, basically anything that I had been calling meditation in my like hippie travels before that did not deserve the name. Like, that was the first time I actually meditated. I actually like heard the Dharma, and see, I'm almost close to tears now. So we almost got there. Like, it profoundly changed my whole life, right? And the trajectory of my story. I got as obsessed with meditation after that as I had been with the internet and video games, which was very helpful, you know, and being like a learner and some kind of a being self-taught in a lot of ways. I just kind of like thought I could do it on my own. And that took me pretty far, but I eventually, you know, found teachers and peers in different meditation centers in Theravada around the United States. And that really planted a seed in me of finding an intersection between who I was as like a technical wizard and the timeless Dharma and how that's manifesting now in the world. So post-COVID, I kind of like came down from the mountain, you know, after spending many, many years in like long retreats and meditation training, and was like, okay, how can I like make a living with this, but also contribute to the world in a way that doesn't compromise the values and virtues that are now very core to me from having done this training. And so that's what I've been exploring and what has eventually brought me here to Bhutan. I make a living as a freelance tech consultant, and I've been following AI since like 2019 or so. So it's been very weird to see this like my world kind of like turn inside out and become like the world that we're all living in now. And at the same time, I have been like certifying in facilitation modalities, including one called relatefulness or relational mindfulness. So I love bringing people together and having like good, wholesome conversations with a lot of emotional fluency, with a lot of intellectual breadth and depth. But so far that pursuit has not like paid the bills. So I work as the tech person, but I also like doing this thing. And like last year, I heard about the GMC for the first time. A friend of mine went to the Bhutan Innovation Forum. We had a conversation afterwards. Bhutan was like not at all on my radar, like in the least before that. Maybe just like a few hints here and there. But after I heard that like a Buddhist nation is, the king of a Buddhist nation is putting like the weight of the country behind creating a mindful city, I was just so inspired by that. I was like, how can I help? You know, like, what can I do? A few months later, found out about the De-suung Skilling Programme, need for trainers, applied. I like saw AI technology was like on there. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's one way I can contribute. And that's what eventually brought me here, getting to, I think, I would say for the first time in my life, really bring together mindfulness and technology with these classes I've been teaching. And I've just met so many amazing people and blah, blah, blah. We can keep going after that, but that's the 5-minute story of how I got here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. There's so much to unpack.
Totally. Let's unzip it.
And I think our listeners, most of whom are also Desuups, would want to learn a little more about where their teachers, their trainers come from. So I want to go back to your childhood. Oh, I sound like Freud.
Tell me about your mother.
And we have the couch here. Your dad was an engineer, and I suppose that inspired your love for technology and ultimately what you're doing right now. But why philosophy in college? How did that happen?
So I initially, it wasn't how I started actually. I went to Texas Tech University, which is not University of Texas El Paso.
Yeah.
I eventually got there for a different reason, but Texas is huge. And I thought like, okay, yeah, I'm into computers. I'll go into computer science. The summer before I started college, like, I don't know how this happened exactly, but being on the internet, like reading different things. I was raised, my family was, I say, Jewish. So we weren't Jewish, you know, no, there's no ethnic connection to Judaism or anything. But my dad is the engineer. My mom is kind of the seeker and spiritual like inspiration for who I am. She grew up Catholic and then became a born again Christian in her like 20s, kind of like rebelled against the family and had like a genuine like spiritual opening during that time. She was very inspired by like mystical Judaism and such. So we were raised like in kind of a weird kind of in between Christianity and Judaism thing around that. So that initially got me interested in spirituality.
Right.
And so that summer before I went to college, I remember seeing this film called What the Bleep Do We Know? If you can find it on YouTube. It's in some ways it's like terrible, but in other ways it was the first time that I kind of like heard these concepts of quantum physics and superposition and uncertainty, and that kind of there was this potential within Western materialist science that it couldn't actually explain everything, all the phenomena we see in the world, but that there could be an intersection between spirituality and science. That was the inspiration. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go into physics. And because I had a genuine curiosity about what is this? What is this? What is going on? Like, you know? Yeah. And that was the best thing I knew at the time of how to explore that. Oh, physics is the fundamental science. So I started in physics. I found that the physicists in university were mostly like engineers and not actually interested in asking like, but why do wave functions collapse, you know? And that was more the realm of the philosophers. So because university is one of those places you can encounter so many different things, I took a world religions and philosophy class in my like first year, second semester. And that just blew my mind.
Right.
Like learned about Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Islam. I learned, you know, the whole spectrum of spirituality, religion in the world. And that teacher, that professor, Dr. Mark Webb, if you're watching this,
shout out.
Good job. Shout out. Really inspired me to like, okay, this is where I should be. And so I switched majors and finished in that.
Yeah. And also a lot of people would think that to go into tech, you need to study something technical, something STEM. But, you know, here's an example. And I've also kind of seen that where you can study the humanities, you can study social science and still work in tech.
Exactly. And you can always change your mind. If there's one thing you take away from this, you know, Denny Desuups watching, you're never like stuck in what you've done or who you have been. You're always on a journey of integrating that with what's next and who you can become. So don't limit yourself by who you have been or what you have done.
And you had a tech career. When we were talking backstage, you said you were with Apple too.
Yes.
But you said tech burnt you out.
Right.
Tell me about it.
Well, yeah, I grew up like idolizing technology. In a way, it's the most inspiring like dimension of the world. I grew up watching Star Trek and Star Wars, and Star Trek especially kind of paints the future as like it's this sort of technological exploration. We build starships, we go meet new species, and like invent the holodeck and all this. And so I was inspired by that, and being part of startups and even learning to code a little bit or all that, it felt like being part of that kind of inspirational movement of humanity. Working for Apple was great in a lot of ways, but being within Apple and then eventually the startup scene in Austin, I saw how much like the values of capitalist greed were driving everything and really like ruining people's minds. I mean, like there's a way in which you have to go kind of crazy to start a business and think that you're going to be one of the 100 startups, 1 in 100 who actually succeed. And the kind of like volume of money and material and everything, the power involved, I just saw that eating people alive, you know, and especially young people. Like we'd go into it and just like deteriorate, you know, our health and everything. And I felt that happening to myself.
Right.
And so I really had to reckon with like not only what it was doing to my mind and the minds of my friends, but also what it's doing to the world. The externalities of scaling businesses and globalism and all this have materially damaged the planet and our ability to survive on it, right? So I saw this and I saw that I was part of it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want to be complicit in this anymore. I want to get out. Yeah, that's what happened.
No, so we touched a bit on creating actual value rather than just, well, the way we measure value in the capitalist system, just in terms of how much profits can you make?
Yeah.
Or how now
How many users do you have?
Exactly.
You know, all that,
Like, can we keep growing and growing and growing? And so you turned towards exploring spirituality and coming to learn about the Dharma. And, you know, when you said, oh, I'm starting to tear up, I actually have a small anecdote where something similar happened to me. And I was talking to a jewelry maker who's also a Dharma practitioner. And, you know, I was telling him about this quote from Shantideva. Have you heard of him?
Of course, yeah.
I don't know how to say this in Tibetan, but basically the translation of it is something along the lines of, you cannot find enough leather to cover the entirety of Earth, but you can wear leather shoes, and that's enough. And I don't know what it is about this quote, but it always makes me, you know, goes to tearing up. I want to cry.
Totally. Yeah.
And to that, he said, oh, that means you have some profound merit that you've accumulated, that hearing something like this touches you. And that kind of opens you up.
Absolutely.
So, you know, seeing you that way, I mean, I just thought I'd share that. I totally get it. And so let's, but that's one of my favorite quotes. So coming back to you going back to where you came from, your background in technology, your childhood and all that, and then now you are very much motivated to bring value, comes the emergence of what you want to do in tech, AI, and mindfulness.
Yeah.
And then Bhutan happened. So when you heard the news that you were going to come to Bhutan and you have to teach Desuups this particular course, how did you go about designing it? So if I were to join your class, what would I be learning? What's your approach?
So my teaching approach involves like 3 key dimensions. I think of myself more as a facilitator than a teacher. So facilitation means like to make easy. Facile is the Latin for easy. I think it's Latin. It's either Latin or Greek, but it means like to make easy. So I've found that just like my mother made it easy for me to learn things on my own, I take that approach as well in my classes. I do say like, okay, learn this material. These are important facts to memorize or history and stuff like that. We spend maybe like the first 10% or 20% of the class in that mode. The rest of the class, most of the time you spend in it, is me helping you learn what you want to learn. I think the second important dimension of my teaching is getting it wrong. So I teach my students this. It's so important to make better and better mistakes. So we learn more from quote unquote failure than we learn from success. You learn from success, thing works the first time. You don't know why it worked, and your knowledge is more brittle, right? So if you encounter a problem in a particular artificial intelligence application, for instance, you're trying to build a website using ChatGPT and you're getting errors. Well, if you only like had success building your website on the first try and it just worked, you aren't able to solve those problems that inevitably arise.
Yeah.
You know, I learned this through like the hard way trying to play video games as a kid. Driver issues, you know, and random errors and like, oh, this is missing. And there's no manual anywhere. My dad even doesn't know how to solve the problem. I got to figure it out. So that's the second, curiosity or getting it wrong. And then the third dimension is always staying curious. So genuinely having like a question that drives you is maybe the greatest blessing of like a healthy and fulfilling life, right? If you have a passion, a desire that you are actually pursuing, then you'll learn how to learn, and you'll find that you diverge a lot and explore a lot more territory. And that, for me, has actually been the most fulfilling aspect of life, is getting to explore so many different skills and topics and realms of knowledge. Because I think the more we explore, the more we're actually able to bring it all together in a beneficial way to actually create and share in the world. So having like that genuine spark of curiosity, not losing that, really fanning that flame, that's for all of my Desuups students, like that I say, like, don't ask ChatGPT to give you ideas.
Right.
Start with your own idea,
Right.
and then ask it to show you some variations on that, right? And then really dive into those and explore those, right? But keep like in touch with that spark. So those are the three dimensions. I facilitate, I get things wrong and correct and make it better, and then always stay curious.
And how many students have you had?
Between both classes,
Yeah.
the first one we had like 25 or so,
Okay.
and it was very crowded in the classroom, but we made it work.
Yeah.
Very fun, great diversity. Over half of them coming from outside of Thimphu, many from Gellifu, many from the east.
Right.
And the second class, we have just 10, and that's been good in a different way because we have fewer people. I can kind of go deeper with each one and really custom tailor the teachings or the facilitation to what they're genuinely interested in. Because in my class, we cover the whole range. We don't just look at text large language models. We start there. We look at Gemini. We look at ChatGPT. We look at Perplexity. We learn how to prompt starting there. And then we get into image prompting and using, image generators in ChatGPT and Gemini. We get into video. Like Google gives away a ton of free video generation tools. Google AI Studio, if you're listening, just go there. It's amazing. And also pairing that with audio, even with music. There's a pretty decent AI music generator called Suno now that gives away free credits every day. Okay. And so you can, if you've got an idea for something you want to bring into reality, AI can help you do an initial version of that so much more quickly and easily, and even for free, than anything that has existed before this. It still isn't at the point these days where you can create a, super professional, 100% polished, like production ready film or website or even like, report 100% with the AI. You still need a lot of human taste and critical thinking and all of this. You've got to evaluate the responses for hallucination and like bias and all kinds of stuff. Sometimes it'll sometimes make a thing that's like fine. We call it slop, like it, but you can tell it's like the fingers look a little weird, or the teeth do strange things. Actually, the hands have gotten better, but there's different stuff, where just items in the background will kind of warp and morph. And it's like you don't want to pretend that that's like as good as if it were done with a professional visual effects artist or like shot on film actually. But you can go from like a sketch of an idea to something that is pretty visually compelling very quickly and easily now.
Yeah. What do you think is mindful AI? It's a big
question. Great
question. Because with the wonders of AI, what it can do, and it has made a lot of work easy, but it also comes at the danger of human beings, and especially the younger generation, completely losing their willingness to engage with something on their own without the aid of AI. And I think personally, what I find frustrating is when I Google something with Google AI, there's already like a summary generated. And it's helpful, but sometimes it annoys me because I'm like, I want to go and look for these information myself, and I want to make up my own mind. I don't want the AI to tell me like, here's the disadvantages, here's the advantages.
Yeah, and pretend that that's like the complete answer or something like that. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you there. And I think it's an excellent question that I don't have all the answers to. Currently, I don't think anybody does. But I think, like I said, as a philosopher, I learned that oftentimes the best thing you can do is ask a good question. So what is mindful AI? What keeps us sovereign? What keeps us intelligent? What keeps us independent? What gives us the most freedom around knowledge? I think these are all like adjacent questions that are really important to be asking. One framework or lens that I look at this from or through is I've actually come up with like 4 dimensions that compose mindful AI. And these are just like, my experience from the class and my own experience working, and as a meditator, like inform this way of looking at it. It's not the only way, but I think it's a good way. So the first is we've got to start with a sense of sovereignty. Like AI is not like some sort of magical oracle that knows everything and always gets everything right? So taking control and actually like questioning the responses, or even asking the AI to question itself and to check its own work, right? Being very intentional when we craft prompts and stuff like that. But just having a general sense of the AI is a tool that is assisting me, right? This is a partner of mine. This is not some sort of like magical answer system that I'm receiving everything from. I think the second is to be really grounded in our values. So I call this dimension alignment. It's not my term, but I think it encompasses it well enough. AI companies are trying their best to make these tools safe, right? They're trying to make sure that ChatGPT doesn't tell you how to make a bioweapon, right? Or it doesn't give you violent, responses or racist responses or things like that. Those are all good. I think though that we can't rely on AI companies alone to align AI systems with human values. You really have to bring your own values to using the AI. So one of the exercises I do in my classes is, and my seminars, is I go like, okay, what matters to you? Like, what are your values and virtues? Compassion, generosity, discernment, kindness, family. What is it that actually is in the center of your heart? Bring that to your interaction with AI. Put it into the system prompt so that ChatGPT knows this, right? And it doesn't guarantee that it will be aligned and like always in sync with human values, but it grounds you in like what matters to you, right? And that you at least are clear about your own intentions when you're coming to it. So that's alignment. So we got sovereignty, alignment. Third dimension, discernment. Knowing what AI can and cannot do is like super important. We were talking about like the video generation, right? People have seen deep fakes. Maybe you've been fooled by like, you've been scrolling and you've heard like a narrative background on a video. Probably been AI. Like AI voice is really good now. AI images are pretty good. Videos getting better. Soon we'll have real-time generated worlds. Google Genie Genie 3 was just shown. ChatGPT 5 just launched, right? These tools are getting better, but they're not perfect, right? They hallucinate. They've got bias from their training data. Their answers can be incomplete. So knowing like what AI can't do is important, but also knowing kind of the pitfalls of AI addiction is like something that I put into this category. Discerning how much to use an AI tool. Like when image generators first came out, like maybe you had this experience as well. You can just get kind of addicted to generating AI images.
But it comes at a huge cost to the planet as well, because there's so much energy being used up.
Exactly. Yeah.
In fact, the other day I saw a post which was like, don't say thank you, please, to ChatGPT, just prompt.
Yeah.
And then there's another meme, which is like me saying thank you to ChatGPT so that the day when they take over, they'll be nice to me.
Yes, I know this one. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
In fact, you probably shouldn't do that. Think of each prompt as doing work. It's burning energy. It's using water, right? Thankfully, AI has gotten a ton more efficient in the last 3 years even than when it started. So some of the figures you might have seen about energy use are not as relevant anymore. Side note, I also think this is why it's super important to have like AI infrastructure in places that are carbon negative and can and have abundant power. So Bhutan could be doing a lot in that regard. You know, a lot of companies would probably pay a lot for verifiably carbon negative compute, right? Still got to upgrade the internet here, but you know, that's coming. But yeah, that discerning like, okay, what actually needs to be done and what can the AI do? That's a good third dimension. And when am I getting sucked into it in a way that is unhealthy, right? That's a dimension of mindfulness applied to it. Fourth dimension, which I think is like super relevant to this, is let's see. Let's review so far. We've got alignment, discernment, sovereignty, and then we've got transparency. So a lot of us are just using AI and not telling other people that we're using AI, right? Like you're probably using it to generate emails, maybe even like text messages or like difficult messages that you might need to send to other people, reports, right? Like videos, all this. I think it's super important for us to be proactively transparent and disclose how and when we're using AI. So this is the fourth dimension, I say, is just like include a little disclosure, like in your email that you use ChatGPT to help you with, say like, PS, this is like actually like 60% AI written, but I changed like 40% of it, right? Or if it is 100%, say it's 100%. And it's like, it's not you trying to be like calling yourself out or like, oh, I'm so ashamed for using AI. Oh, it's more like we are helping each other find the kind of moral balance of how we should be using these tools. And we cannot have good societal norms about what is ethical AI use unless we already accurately understand, honestly, how we are all using it. So I highly encourage, like just right now, you can just start doing that. AI detection tools don't work for text or image. They're too easy to fool. So it's on us, right? Like mindfulness includes ethical action, right? And so I think that's a really important aspect of it. So that's one, high level summary of mindful AI.
Right. So where do we go from here? You've been in Bhutan, you've lived here, you've also had the opportunity not just to teach, but also to speak to a lot of people who are in positions of decision-making, influence. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the opportunities here in AI development.
Absolutely. Get ready for some spice.
Okay, go for it. I'm all ears.
This is going to be easy.
Okay.
There's a lot of potential here. I'm sure a lot of people say that about Bhutan. Specifically, what I see around AI is there's not only this dimension of like, how do we apply mindfulness to artificial intelligence? How do we bring GNH values or just human values in general to using these important new tools? But it's like, how do we, when I lead my seminars, and I've been, blessed by DSP has kind of like lent me out to a few different departments, to DHI, to GovTech, to, a range of people through the Institute of Happiness. And what I see when I ask folks, what are your biggest concerns about artificial intelligence in Bhutan? And what are your happiest dreams for AI in Bhutan? I get a wide range of answers, but they're consistent answers, And there's a general concern about things happening very quickly and falling behind, right? That the world has developed these models. They've built data centers in the last 3 years at an unprecedented rate. And it's not really possible to build and invest on that scale here. But I also don't think it's necessary. It is important to have access to these kinds of intelligence. I think artificial intelligence, or what we're calling artificial intelligence, generative AI, is an important new tool, but it must be married with all of these other dimensions, the discernment and the transparency and everything. However, if you don't have the ability to to do what's called inference, to actually run these models within your own country, there are privacy concerns. You're sending your documents and your images over to OpenAI or Google or DeepSeek. Who knows what they're going to do with them? In most cases, it's secure and probably everything will be fine. But in terms of legal compliance or even just, like moral resonance with what Bhutan is all about, having the ability to do homegrown intelligence here is I see as the biggest opportunity. And it mitigates a lot of those issues that people are concerned about. Loss of cultural identity, bias, overdependence. A lot of these things can be mitigated if you're developing your own large language models here that are trained on GNH values and can speak Zonka and Shashump and like all of the native languages that are spoken here as easily as English and kind of translate between those, but are also conceptually aligned with Bhutan in a way that like ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek just cannot be, right? And if the actual machines that are generating those responses are here within the country, they're carbon negative, right? They're fast, because they don't have to go out and come back. You don't have to go to space to get the response. And they can be tuned and tweaked to be relevant to Bhutanese businesses, develops a local entrepreneurial economy around AI development. Like there's just all these benefits of doing that here. And it doesn't need to be a 10,000 GPU data center. It doesn't need to be a square kilometer, of floor space. It can be, just a closet-sized cluster or two. Is plenty enough to get that started, and it's well within the investment range of Bhutan, and I know what the assets are, and there are people here trying to get that done and working on that. What I generally don't see the urgency around it though, and I think this is maybe the biggest disconnect is there's not a deep appreciation for how fast AI is moving.
Yes.
It is the fastest developing technology that we have ever seen, period, right? To give a brief example, it took 23 years for the internet to kind of spread all over the world. It started in the United States, and it took about 2 decades for it to spread all over the world. It took ChatGPT like a year to hit that same saturation outside of the United States. Profoundly faster, right? ChatGPT or OpenAI now has almost 1 billion weekly active users, and they've reached that from 0 in 3 years. It took Facebook like 5 or 10 years to get to that after they launched. And we're seeing the kind of leaps in intelligence happening faster and faster. There's no way that like Bhutan will be able to train a large language model on its own that is like competitive with ChatGPT or Google. And I don't think that Bhutan should. But there are plenty of open source models out there, including ones like from Switzerland that have been trained on carbon neutral power and ethically sourced data that could be like fine-tuned on a closet-sized cluster of computers. Now, given my background in engineering and as a wizard, I have the most sophisticated opinions about the most technical aspects of the opportunities. On the philosophical or the mindfulness side, I think it's just really important to have to guard sovereignty and encourage transparency, all these things we spoke to earlier. I think doing that, especially early education in using AI tools, will also make it more likely that people will not be fooled by fraudulent, generations. That you will not have unethical uses of AI. Just the earlier you can start people on that, the better. And as much education as can be done now and quickly will really mitigate a lot of the risks and downsides of AI and encourage the upsides. Having wildly, massively accessible PhD level education to everybody, being able to code as easily as speaking, creating new kinds of business models that have never existed before here. Like all of those are the kind of the upsides of AI. And all of those are just as or even more within reach than the downsides. But I think if we focus too much on like how this can go wrong, it will go wrong. It's like important to be aware of that.
Yes.
But like where attention goes, energy flows, you know. And
Correct.
so let's manifest the good stuff.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of sophisticated things so far, but tell me something that maybe took you by surprise, something that was unexpected when you were teaching these concepts to your students who probably, you know, I would assume that that was the first time that they were in a class like this, listening to something like that. And, you know, what did you learn from this experience?
So I've been really impressed by the creativity of the Desuups in my classes. In both classes now, the most fun that they've had has been when we get to image and video generation, and with this class also song generation. I think it's really easy to kind of see the results of visual media, you know, with AI, and so it's it kind of it inspired me how they, you know, their eyes would kind of glaze over in the lectures about like how do you know create a data set and you know this many parameters and blah blah blah, like how a language model works in its function, which I think is important to understand because when it breaks you need to know why. But when we get to the part of actually creating things, there's something that just like wakes up in them and they start making stuff that genuinely impresses me and surprises me. And we start to have like a lot of fun in the class. So I think bottom line, I've been the most surprised by how fun the classes have been. When we get to do like group projects and I kind of break up the class into groups of 3 and 4, and then they, you know, have spirited conversations about what to make and, oh no, you should do it this way and that way, you know, things just kind of like begin to bloom and blossom that I never would have anticipated. And I'm just like, here to, you know, water the seeds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for somebody outside Bhutan listening into our conversation and thinking, oh yeah, I have something to offer to DSP, I would want to be here. Any message for them?
Ooh, like going back to what motivated me to leave the startup scene in the first place, there's kind of this almost like jadedness or cynicism that can overtake the mind when you spend too much time in capitalist pursuits. What I have found here in Bhutan is sincerity. There's so much sincerity here, and it infuses the leadership and the institutions and the food and like all these dimensions of life. And that was a breath of fresh air, you know. That was a huge relief to come here and then just be immersed in that. I almost take that for granted now that I've been here 2.5 months. But if you're considering coming here, that stark contrast when I first arrived was like maybe one of the most surprising things. It's like, oh, people actually like genuinely are kind and sincere a lot of the time here, more than I tend to encounter in the rest of the world. Not to say that that doesn't exist elsewhere, but that really, like, I was like, wow. I was kind of blown away by that. Yeah.
And that is a beautiful message to end our podcast on.
Great. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Namgay.
so much. I had a lot of fun too.
Yeah.